Good afternoon, Janet. I'd like to thank you for coming along today to Barry War Museum and Heritage Centre and for volunteering for being part of our Human Library. And our Human Library is talking to people who were alive during World War II. So how old were you, Janet?
Well, I was 5 when the war started. I was born in 1934. So my earlier recollections of the war, of course I was young then, but I can remember quite a few incidents. And the one especially was, I lived in Victoria Road, and I can remember one night there was a very bad air raid, and my father unfortunately was in work that night, and my mother, she had 4 children, and although we had an Anderson shelter in the garden, I don't know why, we were all huddled under the stairs this night, and we could hear the bombs dropping, and a couple of houses around us were bombed, one in Cambridge Street and Oxford Street in that area. And the people next door knocked and asked us to go in with them because they had one of the shelters, that indoor shelter. And then my uncle, who also knew my father was working, he lived in Vale Street, and he came looking for us to see if we were all right. Couldn't find us because we'd gone in next door. And then he took us back over to his house then. So, you know, everybody, we were all, you know, looking after each other, you know, people did in those days. And that's all I really remember of the night, you know, huddled under the stairs with and you could hear the bombs dropping. And then the next day, because we were a bit older then, and down in Romley Park, picking up shrapnel from the remnants of the bombs, and we gathered quite a box full of pieces of shrapnel then to keep as mementos. Don't know what's happened to it now since, but I don't remember a lot other than because life was, to me, was pretty normal. I remember my father had a big map of the world on the wall, and he was following the events that were happening as we were listening to the radio. And as I say, when it ended then in 1945, I was 11 then, and so, you know, later years I can remember bits of things, but that was my most vivid memory, was that night when the bombs dropped on the street that we were living in.
Could you actually remember what that date was?
No, I can't. I'm sure I could find out for you. I've got a list at home somewhere of the names of the people who died that night, whose houses were bombed, but I can't remember the exact date.
Another question I ask people who lived through the World War II is about rationing.
Oh,
Have you any memories of rationing?
Oh, I do. Yes, I do remember about rationing. I remember on a Saturday, my sister and I, because my older brother and sister were in work and that, but my sister used to have to get up in the morning and go across the road to the Co-op stores, and she would queue there for cakes. And then my job was to go down to Park Crescent and queue at Monk's the butchers, and for any cold meats that they came in. You never knew what you were going to have because everything was rationed. But so that was our Saturday morning job. She queued for cakes in the Co-op, and I went to Monk's for the meat.
And rationing didn't end until 1954. So can you remember what it was like?
Oh.
I mean, the war ended, but rationing didn't
Oh
end.
yes, because you had to have coupons for everything, for the meat and tea and sugar and all things like that.
And no sweets for children, was
Oh,
there?
no sweets, no. I remember there was a little shop in Park Crescent, and it was run by people called Jordans, and they evidently they must have had a supply every now and again. And once they did the call would go out there, the sweets in Jordan's, and we'd all run to get sweets because it was a luxury. You just didn't have sweets or anything, lemonade and fruit as well, bananas, things like that. You didn't see. So.
Could you remember if your parents grew vegetables in your garden?
Oh yes, yes. We all relied on homegrown produce, so we didn't go hungry at all. Because my father had an allotment and my uncle, and they used to grow all the produce in season, and potatoes were stored, treated and stored, then put away, for the winter and that. So no, we relied a lot on allotments.
One other question I'd like to ask you, your father obviously wasn't called up.
No.
But did he do anything like air raid warden or...
No, he didn't. He worked on the railway, and unfortunately, in 1944, in July, he was going to work. He lived at Barry Station, in that area he worked, and on his bicycle. But unfortunately, he was run over by an American lorry and died in hospital 2 days later. So that was a very, very sad time for my mother, because I was only 10.
So your mother was left with 4 children?
She had 4 children, yes. And a widow's pension in those days was nothing. She had to wait quite a while before she even got anything. And so that's, I think, I'm not sure if this is right. My father, he was 44 when, 43 when he died. And he hadn't been called up. I think he had something wrong with his legs. There was some medical reason why he wasn't in the army or whatever. So, but he did work on the railway, and that's he was on night shift that night that I was saying about when the bombs dropped. He was working then.